The following conversation is a living continuum that includes every link of the coffee value chain from before the seed to after the cup. I'm Jesse Hartman, and this is the Coffee Podcast. For some, coffee varieties are simply a nice touch on their favorite coffee bag, that little extra piece of information that helps them enjoy the region they're sipping on. For others, planting the right coffee variety in the ground is the difference between making a living and planting a coffee plant that won't endure, thus not making a living. Here's a question for you. How do you know what's on your bag is accurate? How can a producer know what variety they should plant in the ground? Today we're talking about Ethiopia. What if I told you you've been calling Ethiopian coffee varieties by the wrong name? I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Getu Bukala of Counterculture at the new Counterculture Training Center out in Seattle during the SCA Expo this year. We're going to jump into the conversation, which starts as a conversation about his new book, but what you find is later we end the interview and come back, turn on the microphone again, because there's another conversation we wanted to have on the show. Let's jump right in.
My name is Getu Bukala. I'm from Ethiopia. I used to work for the National Coffee Research Institute in Ethiopia. And I was a coffee breeder and a coffee quality researcher. Just my main task when I was in research was like developing improved coffee varieties. So after my job in the National Coffee Research in Ethiopia, then I joined Counterculture Coffee back in 2015 as East African Supply Chain Manager based in Addis Ababa and coordinating 6 different countries and going around and sourcing great coffees and bringing good relationship between counterculture and different suppliers in East Africa. Yeah, then within this process, just we start like thinking about bringing good knowledge in the coffee industry because we have noticed that there is a big knowledge gap on coffee varieties from Africa. So Ethiopia as a center of origin and genetic diversity for coffee, there is a huge knowledge available in the country, but it's not really shared correctly with the coffee industry people around the world. So we start thinking about like writing a report like 2 years ago. Then we kept on discussing about writing this report, but at the end of the day, we reached out writing a big book about Ethiopian coffee varieties. Yeah.
So it sounds to me like sharing information is behind the purpose of the book. Is that correct?
Yeah, because there are like huge different information on the varieties sitting or scattered around in different sources. But there is no kind of like one focal point where people can access, this detailed information about the varieties. So what we did is we reviewed different documents, and I used my research background in Ethiopian coffee varieties. Then we compiled all this information and we reviewed different documents, and we wrote a book. So the main objective of this book is like to convey the right information to users, especially to those people in the coffee industry. So with this, we hope that there will be a good understanding on Ethiopian coffee varieties. So at this point, the consumers will have the right information, what kind of products they are consuming, because there is a huge change, for the last few years on coffee varieties, like in the specialty coffee industry. Long past years, we used to drink only coffee. That's a black coffee. So people, they don't understand like what kind of species are there in coffee. Then, we start differentiating like between Arabica coffee and Robusta coffee. Then with this, when people start like understanding the difference between Arabica coffee and Robusta coffee, then there is a kind of like market differentiation for different coffee species. Then there is a big interest because of the high quality in Arabica coffee. There is a big interest, like larger number of people consume Arabica coffee. So there was a high demand for that species. Then within that, there is a kind of like different market differentiation, like specialty coffee industry and the commercial coffee industry. So these days, like the specialty coffee industry is growing big. And within that, like roasters, they start to like, specialize in different products, like maybe sourcing different coffee from different origin, like sourcing different coffee, like based on different processing type. And there is still like trying to differentiate their product on the basis of the varieties. But the point is there is, a common communication among coffee roasters around the world, like especially on Ethiopian coffee varieties. They mostly mention heirloom. Like they generalize Ethiopian coffee varieties as heirloom. But the truth is that Ethiopian coffee variety is not really heirloom. There are different coffee types. Like we have improved coffee varieties, which are developed by researchers and distributed to different coffee farmers around the country. And we have like a variety selected by farmers. These are the local land races. And we have like wild coffee varieties, which is growing in the wild. So for me and like for us, generalizing Ethiopian coffee variety as heirloom is not the right way to communicate, with the consumers. So these days, our consumers are really very, very smart, and they want to know, what kind of product they really consume. So labeling the right information on the right product is something very important with the growth of this specialty coffee industry.
Right, and that's just beyond being honest and informative and exact with the information, right? We don't want to be putting heirloom on a bag from Ethiopia just because that sounds like what it should be, right? We want to be putting the correct information on bags.
Yeah, exactly. The point is, whenever you put just heirloom, you are giving only just one generic name. It's a general name. So, but the point is, like within your product, you might have improved coffee varieties. For example, we have a very well-known coffee variety in Irgechefe, which is named by farmers, which is called Krume. And at the same time, this Krume variety is similar with an improved coffee variety, which is developed by coffee researchers, coffee breeders, which is called 74110. Now, for a roaster like Counterculture, we know that just what kind of variety is grown out there, then buying the coffee and roasting the coffee and labeling heirloom, it doesn't give sense. Because the reality is that the farmers are producing either Krume or 74110, or there is another variety too. Yeah, so accessing this kind of information and having a detailed information with respect to these specific varieties is gonna change, the way we think about coffee, and especially it's really good to be more transparent with our consumers because they know that what kind of coffee they are drinking, and at the same time, in terms of like marketing, having a very differentiated product, is gonna be great. Like heirloom is one, but when you differentiate, the variety outside of heirloom, you're gonna have like different products from the same origin.
So who would you say this book is for? Who did you write it for? Who do you think would enjoy reading this sort of thing? Who do you think would benefit maybe in the business side of coffee?
Yeah, our target is kind of general. Like if I'm starting like from origin, this book gonna help the farmers because planting coffee is not something like, very simple. You need to better understand the coffee variety you are bringing in your farm. You need to better understand what kind of environment I have and what kind of varieties is going to fit and give me kind of good production for the environment. So for the farmers, when they read this book, they're going to know the detailed characteristics of the variety. So they make kind of smart decision on selecting specific variety and bringing into their farm. So the first benefit will be for farmers because it gives them a kind of like great information for what kind of varieties they are selecting and bringing into their farm. And secondly, these are small-scale coffee farmers. But secondly is like for big investors who are like having a big coffee plantation, maybe like 200 or 300 hectares of farm. So that's a kind of huge investment. So an investor will be well informed about what kind of varieties he's bringing into his farm. Because, for coffee, what's really very interesting is that So whenever you choose a coffee seedling, you don't know what kind of characteristics it will have after 3 or 4 years, because the first harvest will be like after 3 years most of the time.
Right.
So you don't know about the seedling. If you don't have any information about the seedling or the variety, and you don't know what will happen after 3 years, maybe when you're starting giving like yield, it may be affected by disease. Or it may be like at the end of the day, the quality will be quite poor or quite low. So it's going to affect your business. It's going to affect like your investment. So for big investors, like giving them the right information about these varieties, then he will have a big choice and different choice. He's well informed and he knows what kind of varieties he's bringing into his farm for the investment. Then the other target group is roasters. So roasters, basically, like in the coffee and the specialty coffee industry, they are specializing in different aspects. Like they are sourcing different origin from different environment, and they are sourcing like different coffee types, like the washed coffee or the sun-dried or natural coffee, and they are specializing, like trying to bring in different coffee varieties to their roastery. Like they're bringing a very famous and popular variety, if you heard, like geisha variety. Mm-hmm. So like people are selling that coffee with higher prices, you know. So for roasters, it's gonna be something great. Because they know what kind of varieties they are bringing, so they can label, you know, a different name in their product. They are not only keeping on like saying the generic name heirloom. So with this, they can differentiate their product on the basis of the varieties.
So adding value to, from a roaster perspective, adding value to their roasted coffee with the augment of more accurate or more information on the bag.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, this is like we help them to access the right information about their product. That means the first thing is like they differentiate their product. Like heirloom is one, but now after this book, they might have like maybe 3 or 4 different names on their product from the same origin. So this is a kind of like value addition, because information is something power. That's the way you get connected with your consumer. So giving this kind of detailed information, you keep having your consumers just staying with you. So, yeah, then the last but not the least is the final consumers in the industry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so giving the right information, what kind of product we are roasting and what kind of products they consume is something very, very important in this modern community. Like the coffee consumers, they want to know, you know, what kind of products they consume, because they are really concerned about their health. And they want to know like what kind of information is there just labeled on the product. And maybe the other target group we want to address with this book, scientists and coffee researchers, because researchers are doing different stuff, different research projects on coffee varieties. So having this kind of detailed information available for researchers is going to be something great, because they start like thinking in a different dimension how they conduct research on coffee varieties.
Well, great. I think we're excited to check the book out, and we can put links and everything to the book on our podcast like we always do for our guests. We'll shoot it out in our newsletter as well. So thanks for sitting down with us and talking about how we can better the information in the hands of coffee lovers.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me. Hope, different people will get that information, and hopefully it's going to change the way they think about Ethiopian coffee varieties.
So this is where we intended for the conversation to end. But we didn't know at that time that Mr. Buckala and I would continue our conversation off the mic and decide, hey, let's bring this back to the microphone. So we've talked about the book. Very excited about that. I want to dive into some of what we just discussed off the air. We came back into the room to talk about this because it's important. I think it's the kind of people-focused storytelling that we want to do. And it has a lot to do with coffee culture and the sort of twisted things that can happen in coffee. So let's talk about heirloom a little bit. Heirloom, Ethiopian coffees. You were just telling me heirloom has nothing to do with Ethiopian coffees. Absolutely nothing. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So especially like in the Ethiopian coffee breeders community, like or among coffee researchers in Ethiopia, the word heirloom is not very common, or it's not absolutely existing out there. And even the farmers, they don't understand the word heirloom. So for me, maybe the word heirloom came from the buyer side, because most of the buyers used to hear the word heirloom from their family when the family developed maybe a variety or selected a variety from fruits and vegetables. And when they came in to Ethiopia to buy coffee, especially when the specialty coffee industry started, then they came in there and start maybe communicating with the farmers and asking what kind of varieties they have. Then farmers might respond like, I guess this variety X, like variety Kurume from my grandpa, and my grandpa again maybe from old grandpa. Such kind of communication maybe forced like the buyers to label the Ethiopian coffee variety as heirloom. So when we consider like the dictionary definition of heirloom, this is a kind of seed or a variety which is passed down over generation within a specific family or within a community. When you take this definition back in Ethiopia, it's really hard to find the right place for this definition, because the first thing is like farmers, they communicate different varieties from different areas. There is no specific community or specific family holding a specific variety. Then at the same time, like the word heirloom used like before Second World War, which is very common for open pollinated varieties, but coffee is not open pollinated. It is a self-pollinated coffee pollinated species, so heirloom doesn't really best fit for coffee. And the other thing is like heirloom is kept within a specific family. There is no single coffee variety which is kept for a single family in Ethiopia. So this is a kind of like misrepresenting the Ethiopian coffee variety as heirloom by different actors in the coffee industry. So when you break maybe the heirloom, that's a kind of, because basically the buyers were informed differently because they don't have like the right information about Ethiopian coffee varieties. They kept on like calling and naming Ethiopian coffee varieties as heirloom. But the reality is when you break the heirloom variety, like researchers developed 40 different coffee varieties. Now we have in Ethiopia 40 different coffee varieties developed by breeders and research center, and there are maybe around over 20 different names named by coffee farmers. So in general, over like 60 different varieties are available in the country, growing in different parts of Ethiopia. So breaking down heirloom, you end up with having a kind of very complex and different types of coffee varieties in the country.
So you had said kind of nicely that the word heirloom does not fit. Is that a nice way to say it's just flat out wrong?
I mean, it's not generally like blaming the buyers, saying heirloom, but the point is they are not well informed. They don't have the right information about the varieties existing out there. So like we are bringing our book, the system, then they start reading about reading what's really available in the book, then they start thinking about like breaking down their heirloom into different coffee varieties when they are labeling their products.
I want to talk just really briefly, kind of illustrate this a little bit for our listeners. The idea that, say, I was a coffee farmer in Ethiopia 4 generations ago, and I had a coffee that I had kind of developed over time, a plant that I knew was going to survive and produce high yields, high quality, and it would have been called, because my last name's Hartman, I could call that the Hartman variety, right?
Yeah, you can name after maybe the family name. You can name the variety like maybe after the village name or something else. Mostly our farmers name their coffee varieties after indigenous trees, like big trees. Maybe they are associating like the fruit color of the variety, coffee variety, with another big tree. Maybe like different characteristics, having a kind of similar characteristics with the tree. So they are naming, their coffee trees basically after like indigenous big trees.
Do you see that as a personal touch to the production side for a producer on the production side for growing coffee? Is that a personal touch, or is that just we'll just name it that? Was it just kind of happenstance?
Yeah, it's a kind of common agreement like in the community. Just if I'm simply like naming a coffee variety like Kurume, the other neighbors or the community should agree on the characteristics. So like kind of community name, it's a kind of regional name. And all the farmers in the group, in the region, should agree on that characteristics.
So this is a committee decision, a decision made by the people in the region, in Ethiopia, who come together and agree this should be the name for this variety. And yet, Ethiopia has been known as heirloom for, how many years has that been?
Oh, yeah, I can say like, when the specialty coffee industry started, when people started like going to origin, it came in with the specialty coffee industry, the name heirloom. Before that, that is a commercial coffee type. No one was like differentiating like on the level of like quality. All the coffees coming is all coffee, it's black coffee from Arabica. No one was like caring about like differentiating on the basis of like quality. When the specialty coffee industry came in, the main focus is like quality. So people are like starting going there and differentiating, start communicating with farmers and trying to find different origin, different area coffees. So the name heirloom came with, for me, like with the specialty coffee industry.
So you're telling me all coffee from Ethiopia is not the same?
Yeah, it's not completely the same. Like Ethiopia is very well known for having like very diverse coffee genetic base and having like very diverse agroecology under which coffee grows. Like maybe coffee growing from 2,400 meters above sea level, and you can find coffee like growing around 1,000 meters. So like we have a coffee altitude classification like the lowland coffee, the mid-altitude coffee, and the high-altitude coffee. So when you go into the West, you have like these different coffee types within the West. And on all like 4 different directions, like most of the coffees are coming from the Southwest, from the West, and from the South and East. Within all these regions, you have different coffee types. Like the interaction between the environment and the variety, you're going to have like very diverse coffee types sourced from Ethiopia.
Thank you. Thank you for sitting down again and talking about that. That's great. Fantastic. So, what does heirloom even mean, and where does it come from? The study of words is called etymology, and our source for this information is etymonline.com, where we find out that the word is a noun from the early 15th century, and it originally referred to implements and tools, and eventually came to mean article. These days, it's used to refer to something that's passed down from generation to generation. So what's the big problem here? Well, as Mr. Buckala said, the word has nothing to do with Ethiopian coffee. Outside of the fact that the word was slapped onto the coffee by buyers back in the day. And this is not to blame anybody, it had to be called something, and we just kind of picked it up as heirloom, and it's been carried on for, up until now, I suppose. But now that we have this information, we have a responsibility to take the information and share it with other people. So we're thankful that Counterculture and Mr. Buckala are on that mission. We're on that mission too, and we're happy to share this episode with you. You can find out more about this book called A Reference Guide to Ethiopian Coffee Varieties on our website at thecoffeepodcast.org or on Counterculture's website, counterculturecoffee.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, remember to hit that subscribe button on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you might be listening to the Coffee Podcast. We welcome your feedback, so please reach out to us at hello@thecoffeepodcast.org. The Coffee Podcast is produced by me, Jesse Hartman. Music is by Michael Parallax. You can find his music at michaelparallax.com. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, and until next time, happy brewing.